We've been traveling as far as I have been to get here. I tell you what, this is Clark with Be Heard, coming to you live from Sin City, Las Vegas, Nevada. Fabulous, fabulous city, known all over the world. One of the wonders of the world, really, where you can see as many lights and buildings and so forth within a few blocks as you can see here in Las Vegas. It's been around now, in the late 60s it started to spring up pretty good, and then throughout the 70s till now. It's had times of massive growth, and then we came to a grinding halt. About 08, 09, there were a couple of hotels under construction that stopped building because of the recession. Fontainebleau still's never opened. I think they started up where the Stardust was. I don't know if that's owned still, but I think there's a Chinese company in there building some new kind of Chinese resort for billions of dollars apparently. We'll see if that gets off the ground or not. Well, it's off the ground, it's under construction. We'll just see what happens. It's just what we need, another couple $1 billion hotel here. But whatever it is, it just makes us more of a wonder of the world. I don't think there's any place in the entire world that has the infrastructure we have for like a large convention, something, 200,000-300,000 people, maybe even more than that eventually. But that's a really big convention, and I don't think there's many other cities that can handle it. Maybe Orlando, places that have a lot of hotel rooms. Other than that, though, I don't think there's a lot of places, and I don't think there's any place where you can come in and out of town easier than you can in Las Vegas. There's probably more flights a day here than a lot of places, and it's just an easy place to get to. And weather gets a little toasty in the summertime. A couple days this year was about 115 in that neighborhood, and I'll tell you what, the difference between 100 and 115, boy oh boy, you really notice it, or I do. When I was in my 20s, it never bothered me, but boy oh boy, that's hot. That is absolutely hot. I've been in Death Valley where sometimes in the summer it gets to be 135 at that Furnace Creek resort over there. But like I say, that's a dry heat. Yeah, well, Johnny Carson used to do a joke here at the Riviera. He said, well, you know what? Oh, that's a dry heat. Yeah, well, it's dry in my oven too, but I tell you what, it's goddamn hot. And but anyways, that's Vegas. Everybody's used to. We got air conditioning, so you don't really have to be outside unless you want to. And if you look at a golf course really in the middle of summer, July or August, there's not many people out there. Not in the afternoon anyways. I guess in the early morning they're out there. But anyways, we need to tell everybody that wants to call in here and talk to us. We're at 702-493-5222, and you can get a hold of us and tell us what the solutions are to all the things that we're going through. You can talk to us about what your solutions are to straighten out this electoral process we have that's fundamentally broken. If somehow Hillary Clinton wins this election, we have some serious issues that we're going to have to not just talk about and kick the can down the road, but we're going to have to fix. I tell you what, every other major country in history, like the Roman Empire, for example, after 100 years or whatever it was, it collapsed under its own weight because they used to be very wealthy people in the Roman Empire. They built things and they sold things all over their market area and whatnot. Well, they ended up so fat and rich that they would just have orgies in the Colosseum every day and they buy everything. So all the countries around them were getting rich off of the Roman money because they became a country of consumers instead of a country of producers. Now, through the wisdom of people that we put in office, like the Obama clowns, I'll call them what they are, they've sent all of our jobs off sea. The Clinton and his NAFTA regulations and fair trade and all this crap was only fair trade for all the other countries, not us. And like you have Obama running on a platform to fundamentally change America. What is it that he wanted to change? Because we were the greatest country in the world, highest standard of living.
we protected the world really on dictators and places that would be trying to run over, like Saddam Hussein trying to take over Kuwait. We went in there in a few months, we squelched that and got the country back for Kuwait. What do we benefit by doing that? I guess we stabilized maybe the oil markets for a little while, but you know, I mean, we do these things and these favors and everything. It's not appreciated. It's just, you know, we're stupid. We are run by complete morons. Our whole system is set up to not make it. I mean, if you ran companies the way we run this country, you'd be bankrupt. Well, we are bankrupt. We're $20 trillion in debt. And we're never going to work our way out of that. We have to print more money. If the interest rate were to rise to a common level, this country would be flat, busted, broke, couldn't make our interest payments, let alone anything else. And this is run by stupid, stupid people who've done this. Remember Obama's speech about Bush's deficit of $9 trillion when Obama was running? It's unpatriotic, you know, using the credit card of China to pay this off and that off. I mean, you know, what, God, don't get me started. But anyways, call in here with your solutions. We need to know what to do. There's something that was passed the other day, I think, sailed to either the House or the Senate. I don't know exactly what it was about. I just heard it passing. But it was approved, and Obama is threatening to veto it. You know, of course, if it makes sense and it's a good thing to have, Obama's going to veto it because every single thing he's done in his administration is 180 degrees in the wrong direction of what should be done. Every single thing he's done. Look at this Iran deal. What in the hell is that all about? We had them sanctioned. We were bringing them to their knees. Something was about to explode over there. I mean, it really was, because those sanctions, when you isolate a country, that will work eventually. It'll work on the people to the point they might revolt against their leaders. But, you know, what does Obama do? He sits down or whatever it was and sends Lurch in there, John Kerry, or at the time maybe started it was Hillary, to negotiate some sort of, what are we negotiating with them? We have them squeezed off with a sanction. What are we negotiating? They should be coming to the table with us. And the first thing they should have done was release the hostages, our people that they were holding. But Obama didn't even put that in the agreement. And then secretively, in the middle of the night, he sends them $400 million ransom for the hostages to be released. I mean, this guy is just an absolute, he's not really a mystery because he's been in now for like 8 years. And I knew what he was before he ever stepped into the office. He's an empty suit, didn't have a clue what he was doing, had never done anything in his life but rebel rouse as a community organizer. And here he comes as president. I knew that was going to be a miserable, miserable, miserable failure. And we knew it. So this is not a surprise to me that everything he's attempted to do has failed, because I think that was his plan. He wanted to fundamentally change America, and he has. But he's changed us from the greatest country in the world to almost a third world country. This was his plan, and this is what he's pulled off. And the first 2 years in office, where he controlled the Senate and the House, we got the Obamacare literally jammed down our throats. Not one Republican vote. All just bipartisan, not bipartisan, partisan ran through. Just Harry Reid's nuclear option and tricks like that. Man, oh man, I tell you what, we're right at the brink of something really being bad from this country. It's probably going to take us a minimum of 10 years to make any headway back from the devastation that this administration's cost us. And if we don't get Donald Trump elected in there and get some fundamental, real changes back to what the country was founded on, boy, oh boy, we are in trouble. If that Supreme Court goes any worse than it is right now, as Obama explains to the world, well, the Supreme Court's tied. Right, well, what do you mean tied? How can you have a court that's tied? What does that mean, tied? If you know jurisprudence and you know what law should be and so forth, I don't even understand how can you have a court that's tied? Of course, he's referring to the fact that half of the court was appointed by Democrat president, and half of it was appointed by a Republican president. And some of the Republican nominees have been suspect at best. When our weak Republican Party that we have is more controlled by the Democrats, I think, than the Republicans, to tell you the truth. But we do some very, very strange things. The Republican Party, their thing that I object about most is they don't play the same way that the Democrats do. And the Democrats play despicably. They will use any trick, anything that they can do to win. That's all they're about, win, win, win. Promise everybody, all your constituents, free this, free that, free whatever. Don't worry about how you're going to have to pay for it, because you never will pay for it. And when you're elected, you're not going to give them what you promised them anyways. So it's all a fraud. The Democratic Party is entirely a fraud. The Republican Party is just a little less evil, but I'll tell you, as time has progressed, it's gotten worse and worse and worse. When you have a Sandoval run on a ticket and then gets elected and raises $1.5 billion in new taxes right off the bat, jams that through our throat, you call that a conservative? He's a rhino. As simple as that. So we get lied to, we get taken advantage of. There's nothing worse than no better example of eternal life on this planet than a government program. You'll never get rid of them. And that destroys the country. It takes money from the productive producers of the world and gives it to the Joe Six-Packs, and who don't produce anything, they just consume. And then we end up like the Romans, where you're a country of consumers, and you fall flat on your face, and there goes your country. That's what's going to happen here. That's what's going to happen here. And it is happening here. Look at our economy. Look at the record that we've experienced in the last 8 years. It's absolutely abysmal. It couldn't be worse. I don't think a dog could have run that office better than Obama. I mean, everything is backwards of what it should be. We have 95 million people that are out of work looking for jobs. They don't want to work, but they can't find jobs. And Obama comes out with his phony Washington number, which you'd be in jail if you were running a private company or a public company that way. You'd be in jail at a 4-point-something% unemployment rate. How can that be? Do the math. 330 million people in the United States, probably a workforce of maybe 220 million when you take out the elderly, take out the children, take out the dogs and cats and all that, and you're left with able-bodied men that can work with able-bodied women. Of course, you're probably somewhere around 220 million people. Well, if 95 million are out of work, looking for work and can't find it, what is the true unemployment rate? Everybody in knowledge that can do math says it's over 30%. And it is. There's no question about it. And this is just a lie. Washington, you can't believe anything out of that place anymore. We have a president that gets right in the camera and just spews it out, lie after lie after lie. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. We're going to lower the health care plans, $2,500 per family. And I think the records now show it went up $4,000 instead of down $2,500. I mean, this guy is a liar. That guy Gruber comes and spills the beans last year, telling the truth about how Obamacare was rushed through and how they were laughing when they were doing all this, how they were taking advantage of the people and lying to them. They couldn't call it a tax back then, because even then, with all the Democrats voting for it and everything else, they couldn't have got it passed, so they lied and called it something that it wasn't. Called it health care. It's not health care. It's got nothing to do with health care. It's mandatory insurance. They're forcing you to buy some. So the United States government is making you buy some. Like they owned Chevrolet there a while back when they stole it from the bondholders. And the stockholders, they stole the stock and gave it to the unions. So that's another deal. But anyways, so the U.S. government becomes a stockholder, if you will, in Chevrolet. Why didn't they mandate that everybody buy a Chevrolet? They could have, I guess. They wouldn't call it a tax. They'd call it some kind of a whatever. And then John Roberts of the Supreme Court, would end up to, instead of overturning the law like he should have, he calls it a tax. And Congress has the right to issue these taxes. So they tell something that it's not to begin with, and then they say something that it's not to end with, and you've got just a friggin' fiasco going on. This country's credibility is destroyed. It'll take years and years and years if we ever get it back. And remember, every country that's come down the pike before us has fallen flat on its face. After, as long as we've been around, 240 years, I think they've all failed. Where they have riots and revolutions like the French did, and where they lose their heads. I mean, if that's what we want to have happen here in the United States, that's why they try to get all the guns and outlaw the guns. They're having trouble doing that, so what do? They buy up all the ammunition. So you have Social Security Administration buying billions of dollars of bullets a year. For what? They're trying to confiscate the bullets because they can't confiscate the guns. So what good's your gun going to do if you got nothing to shoot with it? So then the government can just plow down your doors and go willy-nilly and take whatever they want from you? I mean, this, I don't know what's going to stop it. I always ask the question at the end of the day after some discussions we have, well, here's the main question, because this is the way we're going. Will it come down to where a military personnel in this country, American, will turn their weapons on the American people, fellow citizens of this country? That's the big question. Because when we start to go after the heads of our leaders and cut them off, like they had to do in France, will the military turn their weapons on the people of the country? I think they won't. But some very educated people have showed me back in the, I think it was 20s or early 30s, I think something went on like that in a park across the street from the White House where the veterans from World War I were promised certain benefits and then the government reneged on them. Well, the government, or the vets, didn't get what they were promised, were demonstrating across the street from the White House. Well, I forget, or I wasn't around back then, who the president was, but somebody ordered that the National Guard, or the military, I guess, go over there and squelch that demonstration. And they did. And I think, I've heard they fired on, killed some, whatever, but it was a mess. But I guess that's the way he answered my question. He proved to me that something like that had happened in history where American soldiers turned their weapons on American citizens. I really find that hard to believe. The people that I know that are in the military, if I have a discussion with somebody, I'll ask them that question. And they say absolutely not, that nobody in the military will defy the American people when push comes to shove. But we'll see, because I'll tell you what, it may not be in my lifetime, but it's coming. And it only can go one way, folks. This tyranny that we're living through right now, especially after this last 8 years, is not going to get any better. It's like a cancer. The next day it's worse, and the next day it's worse, until it kills you. Well, we're in a cycle right now. It's a normal cycle. Any country after 240 years is going to face these types of stresses. And eventually it's going to get so bad, people won't be able to eat. They won't be able to wipe their butt like in Venezuela, no toilet paper. And it's going to get to the point where the people have had enough, and dramatic changes have to be done. You have to hit that reset button, if you will. Well, we shall see. I don't know. I really, really don't know. There's probably never been a country, I know there's never been a country as successful as the United States with the amount of resources that we had available to us. And here we are just absolutely blowing it. Because the Democrats, the liberal progressives, have had a policy for the last several decades to actually dumb down the students that are coming up through our education system. And they don't teach history. They don't want you to know what's failed in the past, because that's what they're promoting to do in the future, is past failures. And you know, if you're a student and you realize this, you can say, hey, wait a minute, but no, they don't want you to be smart. They want you to be dumb. And they've actually literally dumbed down America to the point where you can go on the street and find people that'll vote for Hillary Clinton. And that just absolutely amazes me. And what's amazing about it is there's women, and they're going to vote for her because, well, it's time for a woman president. Well, that's brilliant. Okay, great. It's time for a woman president. I could almost agree with that, but not that woman. That's the problem. You take the answer to a question and you completely distort it and get off base because you're answering it by the woman thing instead of the person thing. We never could ever have that woman as a president. Now, here's a situation that came up just this last week on that town hall they had, I think, a couple of days ago, where Matt Lauer, of all people, gets to ask one-on-one with Hillary Clinton and then with Donald Trump, or vice versa, however the lineup was, I forget. But he got to ask them questions. They asked twice as many questions to Donald Trump than they did to Hillary Clinton. And the questions they asked to Hillary Clinton were, they weren't as soft a ball as they would have liked. And a lot of the Democrats are upset at Matt Lauer because he asked some questions that Hillary Clinton couldn't answer. And now the Democrat Party, the powers to be, are really, the information that I get is they're really, really concerned about the capability of their nominee to be able to survive a debate. Because the other day, it didn't look like head-on-head with Donald Trump in a debate scenario. She doesn't have a prayer. And I think that came out the other night and became pretty apparent. Because there's some questions she just couldn't answer. And then some questions she just got absolutely factually incorrect. Like, we're not going to send ground troops to Libya. Well, they're already there. Things of that nature. She's just misinformed. She doesn't, I don't think her brain, what's ever left of it, is really connected to her mouth sometimes. Because she'll say things that are fundamentally, basically just wrong, and doesn't realize that she said the opposite thing a few days ago.
Okay.
And that's amazing to me that somebody can be that out of touch. But of course, Obama does it all the time. He'll be talking in front of one group and say one thing, and then a few hours later even, he'll say completely the opposite to another group. So these politicians are in season in them. That's their nature. They will say to whatever they think they want, the people want them to say. That's it. That's what they function. They'll put their finger up in the wind, see which way the poles are blowing, and then that's the way they'll change their strategy at the drop of a hat. That's what happens with their dialect and the way they talk. Hillary Clinton, when she's talking to a group of blacks, changes her whole presentation to some kind of a black dialect or whatever it is. I don't know why I said would be easy. Whatever that one was. I mean, these people are pathetic. What in the world are these dudes? Blows my mind. And then she has hot sauce in her purse, and she's just a panderer, and it's phony. And she's one of the worst ever. And the baggage that this lady has, the dead bodies that follow her around, just in the most recent convention of the Democrats, there's 3 dead bodies that are, I heard 4 the other day. There's 4 dead bodies associated with that Democrat DNC convention. And Hillary Clinton, of course, she was the nominee, so I wonder what she had to do with these dead bodies, because they follow her around. These Clintons amass corpses. Vince Foster, all these troops, Troopergate, whatever the hell they call those things. They just, and I guarantee you, Monica Lewinsky wouldn't be breathing air today if she hadn't have kept that blue dress. I just swear to God. I just know that. She was meeting with this operative of the Clintons named Jordan something that had a date with Monica, and he was going to read the riot act to her or worse, and then she came out with that blue dress, and then meeting never came off. So I don't know. I just don't trust the Clintons, not for anything. They're absolutely the worst couple to ever get the hands on the White House, and now we're entertaining the fact that we might let Hillary in there. It's just unfathomable to me. I knew Obama was a terrible candidate, but in my young year naivety in the 2000s, I thought the guy would never get elected. That's impossible. He will never get elected. He's a complete empty suit. And man, was I wrong. And not only did he get elected once, he got elected twice. Good God.
I wondered what the hell is wrong with Mitt Romney that he couldn't beat that guy in a pulp. And he did in the first debate, and then everything just stopped. I think we're getting some hints now of why. The establishment, for whatever reason, wanted Obama to go on, I guess, because we know who controls Romney now. It's not the American people. It's the entrenched establishment people. And I think the Dems and the Republicans are on the board in the same thing on that level. They want control so they can keep power. And it doesn't matter to them if Hillary's in there, because she's a player. She's one of the group, one of the chosen elites. She's not going to make changes. She's not going to rock the boat. And it's just going to be business as usual in Washington, which is mounting debt, a broken country that's on the wrong railroad tracks to the cliff. And this is where we're going to end up. And unless we do some dramatic changes, and thank God, a guy by the name of Trump has stepped up to the plate with his experience and wherewithal to be able to be completely oblivious to the pressures and the control that Washington usually exerts over any candidate that runs. Look what they did to Joe Lieberman. He was a guy that was becoming more and more popular as a Democrat senator from Connecticut, but he wasn't playing by the rules anymore, the establishment. He was saying things that sounded awful conservative. So anyways, they decided that they were going to run somebody in the election and the nominating process in Connecticut to knock him off. And the Democrat Party put millions and millions and millions of dollars behind a candidate to run against Joe Lieberman for re-election. Now, what party does that? You have an incumbent. Usually you support the incumbent, unless he's talking like a conservative, and then he becomes an enemy. So they put all their money behind this competitor, tried to knock off Joe Lieberman, and they did. Joe Lieberman lost the nomination primary, so he's not in the general election. So they knocked him off on the Democrat Party. So the Democrat's going to run against some other Republican, whoever that was, and there you go. But Joe Lieberman said, well, I'm just going to run as an independent. And he did, and guess what? He won. And knocked off the Democrat that had knocked him off in the primary, because the Democrats thought, well, he's safe now. You know, he's not going to win as an independent. But the people of Connecticut, those pesky little people, you know, we the people, remember us? They elected him, and boy, oh boy, was that a slap in the face to the Democrats. I loved him for that, and I've always respected Joe Lieberman. Of course, Joe Lieberman finished out his 6-year term, and then he went away. I think he's either going away this year or he's already gone away, I forget. But that was quite the deal, man. That's what I like to see, because there's nothing worse in this world to me than a politician. I hate them. There's other things out there as bad as politicians, but there's nothing worse. I guarantee you, they'll lie right to your face. They'll promise you things they have no way of delivering, and they'll say whatever it takes to get elected, and then once elected, they don't know who any of you are anymore. They go to their offices, they don't answer the phone, they get a perimeter wall set up to where they don't have to deal with anybody until the next election cycle, and then by then, hopefully they've got enough envelopes stuffed full of cash from their special interest backers now that they'll get reelected and not have to deal with those pesky little constituents, you know, those flies flying around. But this is our system. We've allowed it to happen, and I don't know if it's fixable or not. I really don't know. If Trump wins this election, I'll have hope, but if he does, we have to watch closely and follow what he does, make sure that the changes that he makes don't get wiped out right away, that it's going to take a lot more than just one guy running the country to get this mess straightened out. It really is. And the Republicans in this case, would have to retain the House and the Senate, or, you know, Trump's not going to get anything done. And we need things done. We got to turn this train around and get it going in the right direction again. It's paramountly important. It's extremely important. I've never seen a more important election. And it's not just because of the person, it is in this case, but
It goes deeper than that. It's our whole system's broken, and we have to get it restored somehow. When you have a president of the United States saying the Supreme Court is tied, boy, that tells me a lot. This country's out of whack, because no court should ever be tied. Courts have to rule by law. Now, the Supreme Court can identify what the law is supposed to be, make a precedent that then becomes the law of the land, because one of the theories there is stare decisis, that we as people, we as business people, we as everything, have to know what the laws are so that we can abide by them. And until the law is either changed or whatever, we have to abide by the law. That's our system. That's any system of a straight society. There's no other way you can run it. But we have turned everything upside down. The elites run everything. The elites don't follow the law. Take Congress. They'll pass a law that all of us hens have to follow, us peasants, and they'll exempt themselves from the law. Take Obamacare, whatever that was, mandatory insurance, I guess, but the Congress didn't have to follow it. They exempted themselves. Obama exempted all his union buddies, SIUs and all those cats. They all got exempted. So how do you pass a plan that's going to take everybody's commitment to it, and you exempt all your crony buddies? How does that work? It's a corrupted system, and it's just not going to work. It never had a chance of working ever, and now next year it's going to collapse on its own weight. You have Aetna pulling out of Nevada next year. You've had other major insurers pull out already. All over the country, you're hearing about these major upsets where people insurance companies just say, the hell with it, we're not going to do it. And you're going to have more and more government disruption. You're going to have more debt. People are going to go without health care. We're going to have people in lines till they die trying to get something. And just a terrible, terrible, terrible idea where 6 or 7% of our economy is going to be controlled by the government, which can't really run many things at all. Well, most of the things they try to run get destroyed. But you have, take the military. The military would probably be a very well functioning organization where you have career military men that went to West Point and wherever they go, and they get trained on being a military leader, and they come up through the ranks, and they get promoted probably due to qualifications and performance. Rather than going out and making lies and promises to people, they get elected, or promoted I should say, by their merit. And you end up with these generals and so forth that are very qualified to do their job. But what happens, here comes an Obama in an empty suit who doesn't know dick about the military and starts preventing them from doing their job, and we end up with the fiascos like we have all over the Mideast and everywhere else, where our military leaders are not given the go-ahead to go in and win. Matter of fact, just the opposite. They're stymied on everything they do. Rules of engagement and all that. Where someone's shooting at you, God forbid that you shoot back at them until they show you some ID. In the meantime, you're dead. I mean, come on. We got to give our military leaders the go-ahead, and I think Trump will do this. He'll sit down with military advisors, these top generals, and he'll say, what do you need to do to get this job done? And then he'll give them the authority to do that. And the ISIS will be toast. They won't last long, I don't think. What is it, 30,000, 40,000 of them in the area? We need to wipe them out. Now, I know they've sprinkled themselves all over. You probably have 18 countries where they have a presence now, is the number I hear. But if you wipe them out in their headquarters and you just make it dust, so they don't have any command central, they got nothing but dust and corpses. And that's the way you snuff out cockroaches. And once they go through that, they're not going to have anything to bounce back from. They'll destroy or control their oil fields. That controls their income. They don't have money anymore. And you go in there to win, and we can win. There's still no one more powerful than the United States. And we can do this, and Trump knows we can do it. Hillary Clinton won't do it. So there's your choices. We can get this done. We can clean up this miserable crap that's going on with these terrorists. We can stop this influx of refugees into this country that are a good percentage of them, a very high percentage of them, I would guess, are probably terrorists in sheep clothing. And we have this type of stuff going on. And Hillary Clinton wants to bring in 550% more refugees than Obama. And the reason is because they're potential Democratic voters. And this is what happens. We lose our country because the Democrats will do anything in the world to win. And they don't care, as long as you vote Democrat, they want you there. And now you take this guy, McCulley from Virginia. He was trying to release 200,000, I don't know, felons or something to go vote. And that got shut down, I guess, by the courts. You know, and now he's done something with, I don't know, a lot fewer people, but he's also allowing another batch of criminals, I guess, to vote. And it's only because Hillary Clinton, his buddy, is running for president, and he's her, you know, puppet. And it's just, it's absolutely, everybody, you know, the problem is nobody knows what's going on, but the people that do, that pay attention, there are not as many out there that are, as the ones that aren't paying attention. And that's the problem. You can see that when they interview people in the street, 9 out of 10 of the people in the street don't have a clue what's going on. They absolutely are totally in the dark. And, or they're listening to some talking points, and you know, like they had a kid on there the other day that wants socialism. And I think it was Jesse Waters said, well, where has socialism ever worked? Well, take Cuba. Yeah, how is it working over there? Where the average wage is $20 a month. And people that disagree with Cuba, the regime, they're in jail. How's that working out for the people? You know, but they don't see that. They think Cuba's doing great because Obama released the sanctions or something. That was never really the only ones that were applying any sanctions, if at all, was the United States. No other country was. They were doing business with Cuba all along. But, you know, they just listen to these talking points that are sprinkled out there by the mainstream media that's lying to the people. They know they're lies, but they have an agenda to get Hillary Clinton elected. And that's what they're after. That's what they want. That's what they're all about, is get that lady in office. Don't ask me why, I don't know. Things that don't make sense to me, I have a hard problem with. I have what used to be called an abundance of common sense, and I've never lost it, and I maintain it. I strive to keep my common sense. One reason why I would never even consider being a lawyer, because they lose their common sense after a while. Where you have to argue one side or the other, doesn't matter which side you're arguing, as long as you're going to get paid from whatever you're doing, and you lose your common sense after a while, because you don't know what's up or what's down or anything else after a while. And I see that every day. And the court system here in Nevada is absolutely a criminal enterprise now. The courts here need to have the racketeering, influence, corruption organization classification.
Get right back.
And that's what they need. That was enacted in Congress in the year 1970. Primarily, the goal was to beat organized crime. It had gotten to such a point the government couldn't control it anymore. Organized crime was completely out of control, and the government couldn't do anything about it. Because organized crime didn't rely upon laws to protect them. They didn't give a damn about the laws. They did whatever they wanted to do. Well, now things have progressed to a certain point with those RICO acts. They did a good job in snuffing out a lot of the criminal activity, or at least the entrenched ones that did business the old-fashioned way. But now the RICO Act has morphed into going after all kinds of enterprises, including courts. Courts are one of the most profound criminal organizations there is. And it's proven over and over and over again. The Las Vegas Tribune did an article several months ago where they published a map of the country from a company that's out of Washington DC that takes data and gathers it from all the states and does an analyzation of how their legislature performs, how their judiciary performs, the governor's office, and all this, and they give like the states a report card. Well, guess what? Nevada on judicial integrity got a big fat whopping F. F is a failure. And what does that tell you? Well, the only problem with that is that 46 other states got an F too. So the judicial system in this country is fundamentally broken. There's other states, the highest grade was a C minus, and I think 3 out of the other 4 that weren't Fs, they got Ds and D minuses. I think there was C minus, a D, and 2 D minuses, and all the rest are Fs. So we're really going good. And not that long ago, say 2012, there were some Bs and a lot more Cs and so forth. So it's been an over time deterioration. And it's because nothing makes sense anymore in the courts. The common sense has completely gone out the window. And when you think about it, what I know about the law, I can read the law, I can understand it. Most of the laws, the way they're written, depending on what kind of field you're in, some laws are clearer than others, and some industries have a lot more, like our trust industry. The law in that's very, very clear, because it's been around for centuries, literally centuries before the United States was even here. We had trust law in this world, and they're very fundamental principles. The biggest underlying one is that courts and so forth can't really control much of trust, because the theories are that nobody owns anything. What's ever held in trust came from the person that died. They made a trust, they put all their assets, titled it into the trust, and they selected a trustee to watch over their assets upon death and to make sure that the document, the wishes of the person, they call them settlers or grantors, of these assets would be distributed the way that they dictated. So they left a document, and party A gets this, party B gets that, you know what a will looks like, or a trust agreement. Well, that's the law, that's the way it's supposed to be done. Those are the last wishes of the settler, and that's what they wanted. So the law is very, very, very clear. And no judge supposedly can come along and just change the wishes of the settler. Otherwise, why would you go through the expense and time and effort to create a trust if it didn't mean anything? So these are fundamental, basic principles of law. This is what law is supposed to be, and I think the trust industry points it out better than anything. You have your contract law, you've got a bankruptcy law, you've got various situations, but the most fundamental one that's easiest to understand is trust law. And a spendthrift trust is a provision to where the settler can determine that for whatever reason, maybe they have heirs they want to leave something to, but they're worried about the heirs' capabilities, and if they get a significant amount of assets overnight or whatever, they'd piss them all away, like a lottery winner would, or something like that. So they have the right to pencil in whatever provisions they want to put in there. They could have given all their money to their cat. They can give it to whoever they want because it's their money. You can't tell them who they can give their money to, as long as it's for a legal, purpose. And but they can put stipulations in there that, like, until someone reaches the age of 30, they only get so much, and then maybe they get X amount of dollars when they reach 30, and then X amount when they reach 35. And you can put in there whatever provisions you want, and nobody is supposed to be able to change them. Once they're set, that's it. It's the people's money, and the day that they signed that document, that's the way that document has to go from that point on. Especially once they die, it becomes irrevocable, and it has to be done that way. But, of course, judges who are used to not being told what to do, they wear that magical black robe, and they think they can do whatever because they have that title and so forth. They think literally that they can just ignore laws, they can ignore the last wishes of the settler, and this and that. in my case here, I have a judge who put in the minutes of a court hearing that the Feeleys can get whatever left over after all the lawyers have been paid. Now, wait a minute. I thought this was a trust. First of all, lawyers aren't supposed to get anything from any judge or anybody else. The only people in a trust that could pay a lawyer if they wanted to was a beneficiary once he gets his whatever he's supposed to get. If a beneficiary gets some money, it's in his control now, then he can do whatever he wants to do with that money. If he wants to pay a lawyer at that time, he can pay a lawyer. But why you would is beyond me, because if the lawyer's claiming he protected your interest in a trust, he's a liar, because the spendthrift provisions of the trust protected your interest from everybody, including him. So trust law is very, very basic, very fundamental. Nobody owns anything. Therefore, a judge's rulings or whatever have absolutely no authority whatsoever. Now, you tell someone that in the judiciary, a judge or a lawyer that works within the system, and their eyes just glaze over. They think you're crazy. So, and you can have a discussion with them, or I can, and I'll win every goddamn time. And then when they're backed up against the wall and they got no way to fight out, they just say, well, the judge is not going to do that. Or well, how can he not do it? That's the law. Well, it doesn't matter, because, you know, he's going to do what he wants to do, and then you're going to have to take it to the Supreme Court. That's their famous final straw. Well, take it to the Supreme Court, but they'll never hear the case because they only hear 80 cases a year. That's our illustrious judicial system. I think is just one gigantic big cover-up. They say we have this judicial final authority of the Supreme Court, but how can you have that when they only hear 80 cases a year? And the cases that they hear are kind of like big constitutional type efforts between the states, or the government imposing upon the states, or something like Obamacare, health care, cigarette, you know, name it. There's been some big blockbuster case, abortions, things of that nature. These are the types of cases that the Supreme Court gets involved in. Gay marriage, I mean, good God, there's some things they shouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole, and they do anyways, because like Obama says, they're now tied. They're a political organization. Our Supreme Court has been corrupted by politics, and there's no other way to look at it. Now, why should we be a country with 340 million people, or whatever, 330 million people? We didn't have that many people when our forefathers founded the Constitution. We only had 13 states instead of 50. Well, now we've grown to 50 states, and we keep trying to use the old document. Well, it looks like Swiss cheese now, because it's not applicable in a lot of cases, because things have changed. The sheer numbers of the people have changed. But how can you have 9 jurors on the Supreme Court entrusted to handle all the disputes that need attention from lower circuit courts and district courts around the country? How can you have 9 people deciding 80 cases a year? What do you think that's going to do? I think they get presented something like 8,000 something cases a year. And the reason that's probably as low as it is because maybe 200,000 don't even bother because they know they're never going to be heard. It's a system that's broken. And at some point in our history, whatever history we have left, we're going to have to do something to change these numbers around. We're going to have to change our entire court system structure, the way that these judges are put in power. Everything needs to be looked at, and I think changed. And I don't think we should have lifetime judges. Of course, the theory behind that was, well, that takes politics out of the game. They don't have to be elected, so that's better, where they don't have to. Well, what that does is they end up not having to answer to anybody, and that's not the way to go either. So everything that you try to do in a governmental type organization, whatever avenue, whatever road you go down, is going to be an end to that road at some point, because the people in charge of going down that road are going to screw something up. They always do. And then how do you fix it? If they're there for life, there's no way to fix it till they die. And it's just, we have to fundamentally, I'm not saying that I know the answers to everything. What my common sense tells me, that we need to work on getting some answers, because if we don't, we're going to fail, and we're going to not be a country anymore. And that's the only other thing that can happen. We're either gonna fix this country, or we're gonna have a broken country. And it's just simply not gonna work anymore. And that's where the court system is right now. I think it's completely bonkers in Nevada. From what I see, it's just not gonna work. I got a judge that just completely made a ruling in the last couple of weeks that's just absolutely, fundamentally 180 degrees wrong. It's wrong by the Constitution, it's wrong by US Supreme Court decisions and precedences, it's wrong by Fundamental Law 101, it infringes upon state sovereignty rights, it infringes upon trust law, it infringes upon people's last wishes. It's just fundamentally 180 degrees wrong on every single thing that this judge did. He's trying to award fees to a potential campaign contributor, I guess, to this judge's re-election campaign. So he's just giving him money, and he's stealing money from the prevailing party to give to the losing party. I mean, this is unheard of. This cannot be done. We're one of the few countries in the world that has a doctrine which is called everybody pays their own legal fees. Now, everywhere else in the world, the doctrine in a lawsuit, a civil lawsuit, is that the loser pays. So if you sue somebody, let's say the Philippines, you sue somebody, you lose, you end up paying all the legal fees for your lawyer and the lawyer's side that you sued, because you lost. And that makes sense. What that does, though, that cuts down the legal proceedings by probably half or more. So the lobby effort of the lawyers in this country, the ABA, has all the lobbyists in Washington, D.C., making damn sure that our illustrious Congress and Senate don't ever propose any bill to have loser pays type stuff run through the law. And that's fundamentally backwards to what should be done. If you have a discussion about how can we straighten out our legal system, that's usually one of the first things presented. We have to get loser pays. Because believe me, that's going to cut down 50% of the cases. But of course, lawyers don't want that, because they want a good solid base that they can bleed, feed at the trough from. So I don't think that's not going to happen unless something really big happens in this country to where we can get some of these fundamental wrongs straightened out. Until that one's straightened out, and you have judges like this Gephardt, you're never going to get anything straightened out. This guy completely 180 degrees in the wrong direction. Well, you can appeal it. Well, okay, great. How long does that take? And in the meantime, what happens? I mean, it's just fundamentally unfair. It's unconstitutional. And when you have a guy wearing a black robe that was a career prosecutor, never should be sitting on a bench, ever, ever, ever. The worst judges ever in the history of the world. And that's what we get stuck with, people like that. We gotta change, folks. We've got to friggin' change a lot of things about this country. We have to change our whole election process, and these electoral colleges and super delegates and all this crap, which is nothing more than a fix, has got to go away. We got to fundamentally change our laws. Obama had something right. He's going to fundamentally change whatever, but he was talking about America. And America is changing itself and going down the toilet because of changes that we do need to make. We need to make the right changes, not the wrong ones.